Hi, this is Warren, and I'm here today to talk to you about ways to talk about cultural products. And the first part of this is called Rocks or Sucks, because that's generally students' entryway, or I'd even say most people's entryway to thinking about something. Is it good or bad? Does it rock or suck? And there's a fancy pants name for that. It's axiology. I'm calling it here the science of what sucks. But more generally, it's about asking whether something is good or bad and talking about why. And I think it's kind of sad when most people hear the word criticism, this is what they think of. And that actually has very little to do with what professors, at least, do when they're looking at cultural products. It might have had something to do with what professors did 50 years ago, in terms of elevating the masses or something like that. But most often now, that kind of criticism is done by newspaper columnists, internet bloggers, TV critics, and so forth and so on. I guess it has its place, but to be honest, I think of that as mostly consumer education. Are you going to enjoy this or not? I don't think it usually has much to say about the significance of something. It is more geared towards saying, is this worthy of your time and attention? And that's a worthwhile question, but to me, it's just not a very interesting question. And again, it can be very entertaining, and often people use a great deal of brio and really get a great deal of enjoyment in dissecting how something fails. Okay. And again, traditionally, you think mid 20th century, particularly as people were reacting to Hitler's success and mobilizing the masses and having a minister of propaganda, there was an idea that anything that's popular must be bad by definition. And teachers' job and critics' job was to protect people from the kind of lowest common denominator of television and mass culture in general. And if you see a bumper sticker that says kill your television, number one, obviously these people have never watched Deadwood or Breaking Bad or something like that. There's a lot of amazing stuff on TV, but that kind of knee jerk reaction, television must always equal mass media, and mass media must always equal something bad, is, I'd say, part of a residual culture from the mid 20th century. And I'd also say it's kind of the house style of what many baby boomers who went to college were raised to believe. If that's the old paradigm, here's what I would put forward to you is a more interesting question, or maybe a more interesting next question. I'm a human being, I'm like anybody else. When I see something, my first reaction is, emotional, aesthetic. I'm bored. This is driving me crazy. Or, oh, I'm really excited. I'm absorbed in this. So that I always think is a good way into thinking about a cultural product. But then the next question is, well, what does this mean? And even something that I might consider kind of boring or done in a formulaic way might mean something. And a couple of questions that help me move from is this just good or bad to what does it mean would be one, what are the effects it has on me? And as my partner Liz often says, we can move from those affects that I have, the experience I have, to thinking about, well, what techniques generated those specific affects? What are the effects of those techniques, and what affect does it have on me? And so that can lead me back to considering the form of what I'm looking at. A couple of other questions which move us from just thinking about aesthetics to thinking about things like politics and what audience segment something is aimed for, what kind of affects with an A it's aiming to produce are about, and that's good or bad for what. And then I'll also say good or bad for whom. So certainly, yes, I'm a fancy pants PhD and everything, but there are a lot of times I just want to be entertained. And, something incredibly aesthetically demanding might have a good deal of cultural capital, which I'll get to in a little bit, for a particular segment of people I interact with, but it may not be entertaining. I mean, I love Scooby Doo. I like to just sit there and watch Scooby Doo. And Scooby Doo is great for just being kind of, for me, mindlessly entertained and comforted. And good or bad for whom? Who is setting the standards for what counts as good or bad? And because I originally made this presentation for a youth culture class, I wanted to draw attention to, I think, a real kind of tipping point we're heading towards in terms of who decides what's good or bad. Traditionally, that's been, by traditionally I mean in the last, I don't know, 60 years or so, that's been the baby boomers. Well, 60, let's say 40 years. That's been the baby boomers, and they are such a huge part of the market segment, and such a, in many ways, cohesive generational cohort, because they were raised at a time when there was still a mass market, number one, and number two, they were a large enough demographic that mass market was geared for them, that they have set the yardstick for what is good or bad, particularly around generational issues in terms of what does it mean to be an authentic young person, and what is seen as derivative or unimportant. How can they say, well, I've been there, or I've done that, or, well, if you weren't at Woodstock, you just wouldn't understand. Over the last several decades, they have set the yardstick. They have articulated the norm for those things. However, when we get to the millennials or Gen Y or whatever you would like to call yourselves, if you are one of my younger listeners, you have the demographics now, and there are enough different channels of media that I think that hegemony, that traditional dominance, at least in the United States, that the baby boom has held in terms of defining what sense we make of things, is going to be up for grabs. And as someone who fell between your two demographics and was from a much smaller market segment, I'm kind of enjoying that from the sidelines, just seeing where that goes. Okay, I'm going to pause here.